Hey everyone, and welcome to the Backstage Bikini Podcast. I am your host, Grace Mannion.
And I am your co-host, Jade Hegarty.
So this is our first ever podcast, and we are quite nervous recording this. A lot of technical difficulties, but we want to use this episode to give a whole overview as to what the Backstage Bikini Podcast actually is. Who we are, what we plan to cover across the series, why we set up the podcast, and all that kind of thing. So I'll give a little introduction to myself first. So if you don't know me, my name is Grace Manion, and I am an online fitness and health coach, currently living in Manchester, but I am from Ireland. So my background with competing is I started in 2019. I did my first show with PCA, and I fell in love with the sport. Previously coming from a sporting background, I played a lot of Gaelic football, which is a sport at home in Ireland, basketball, all that kind of thing. But when I got injured through football, I just fell into competing, and my boyfriend Ross at the time kind of got me into it. So yeah, I guess I fell into it. I love the challenge. I'm a very, very competitive person, and I think anybody who competes, you kind of have to be a competitive person. So obviously I go to the gym, I train frequently, I'm an online coach, so it all just fits in perfectly, I suppose, into my lifestyle. I did another season in 2021, which was the start of my NPC season, IFBB, and I competed with Two Bros, and then I took another off season and I competed most recently this year in 2022. I'm just going to do a brief overview because I feel like we could be here all day if we went in depth about it. I'm sure we'll do a specific podcast kind of going through our own competing journeys in more detail, but that's just kind of a brief overview. I did compete this year again with Two Bros and in international shows, and that is where we're currently at. I am obviously going for a pro card as I go back to the competitive nature in me. I don't compete for fun. I do compete to win, as I feel like we all should do, because you put your bodies through so much. But that is the end goal. So I'm currently 3 weeks post-show, and I'm entering my next improvement phase to hopefully compete next year. So that is who I am, I suppose. As I said, we'll go into it more detail, I suppose, in another podcast, but that's just a brief overview.
Me. Okay, so my name's Jade Hegarty. So I have been competing a similar amount of time to Grace, actually. I started first ever sort of competitive exposure was in 2019. I work a normal 9-to-5 job, or like normal. I am a homeless prevention officer now. I've got background in law. But for me, similar background to Grace again, I was involved a lot in dance as a young child, growing up to about 17. Injured myself again around 16, was unable to dance like I'd like to. So for me, the gym was almost a recovery period for me in my sort of time getting into the gym. I got PT, started sort of familiarising myself with nutrition and training, and it was observing somebody in the gym that was actually prepping for a competitive show, and I was in no means ready for a competitive show by any stretch. I am the person that you hate to see jumping from the sort of walkway or the pathway outside and just jumping into a show. But for me, very much so, it was the challenge that I wanted to put myself through, and fell in love with it from the off, really. It was the most difficult thing I probably have ever put my body through. But again, like I said, just fell in love with that discipline, with the structure, with the challenge, with that need, and almost that willingness to push myself that little bit harder. And my first show was a natural show, actually. It was the UKDFBA in 2019. I had quite a bit of a big break after that, came back to competing with a ginormous flop of a show at Two Bros, and then competed this year as well. So again in Two Bros, and I competed in my first show abroad as well at the Amateur Olympia in Spain. So very similar backgrounds, I feel. And very similar sort of characteristics, things that we fell in love with. So it's a wonderful sport, but definitely one that you've got to kind of be in the mood for.
Absolutely. And I suppose going back to how Jade and I met, it was through the sport. I obviously moved to Manchester the start of last year, and you were always living here, I think, weren't you? And We both trained in the same gym, so we both train in Frontline Fit Performance Centre in the city centre. And I remember when you initially walked in, I was like, oh my God, there's another bikini competitor training here, because the gym, it's not like, because it's a private gym, you don't really get that many kind of bikini competitors going in. So I definitely felt, I was like, oh, there's somebody here that I know or have the common interests. And then we were competing at the same time, were we? Or I think we were both in an off season at the same time. Yeah. And then Jade started her prep earlier this year to me. So she was lean when I was deep in off season, and then I was lean when she was deep in off season. So we both, I suppose, click really well. We both know the struggles of bikini competitors and all of that kind of thing. So that's how we met, and we wanted to join forces to create this podcast for, I suppose, other bikini competitors or people who are interested in the sport to learn a little bit more. So I suppose what we plan to cover in this podcast, it's a lot. Yes, we kind of wanted to, I suppose, cover all aspects when it comes to bikini, and kind of going back to the name, kind of the backstage is the behind the scenes element when it comes to bikini and competing and stuff like that. So do you want to run through kind of a little bit on what we plan to cover?
Yeah, of course. So we're hoping, obviously, and we're planning very much so, to interview some of the industry leading sort of athletes, coaches, judges, from all sort of different levels of the sport. So we're hoping to tap into not just the amateur realm, which is very much where myself and Grace are at the moment, but pushed into the pro ranks as well, and understand the difference and what it takes to become a pro athlete, and everything that's embodied in the sport to get there, looking at the way in which the sport has developed itself, talking about the mindset and the things that are involved mentally in competing specifically as a bikini athlete. So not just about the bodybuilding sort of journey on its own, but how that impacts us as bikini athletes specifically. Any others?
Yeah, I suppose just to touch on, we want to interview not just bikini athletes, but also big coaches in the industry who coach those bikini athletes, and kind of just hear their take on things and their approach to preps and off seasons, because there's so much information out there, and we want this to be a place where you can come and just understand it, and realize that, I suppose, when it comes to coaching, that there's so many different ways to skin a cat, and we want to just delve really, really deep into that. And also we're going to try and get some judges on as well to talk about the bikini criteria, because again, it's something a lot of people misunderstand, whether you're in the industry or not. I know even myself can struggle to understand it sometimes, so it's going to help us just as much as it's going to help you. And also something that we want to cover is doing reviews of shows. So coming on here and coming on to YouTube and discussing pro shows that are currently on. Obviously, we are coming up to the Olympia, so we'll be discussing a lot about that. And we want to do kind of physique reviews. So, talking about, the top Olympians at the moment, or talk about the predictions, talk about the physiques and kind of where they're at, and I suppose what we might predict, and I suppose open the discussion to you guys and to get you guys thinking about these upcoming shows as well. So we just want to cover pretty much everything, all bikini.
Everything that is involved in bikini.
Yeah.
But we hope that you're going to stick around. Yeah. How frequently are we going to be posting?
So we will be recording a video every week, whether it's a podcast, whether it's review, whether it's just us chatting about our journeys or just a topic within the industry. You will expect a video, podcast, YouTube from us every single week across all platforms. So across Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, Apple Music, everything. And of course, we are on Instagram as well. We will have the social media platform that we will be sharing kind of little snippets and all of that kind of thing.
It'll be super exciting.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited. Have to say, we're both really, really nervous for this, but it's something that I want to do for a while, and I proposed the idea to Jade, and she was all for it. And the podcast is always something that I think, scared me anyway, because I never knew what I wanted to talk about. But this is something that Jade and I are very, very passionate about as athletes, and we want to have, I suppose, this information for you guys out there, because it's something that I really, really value on YouTube. And I always listen to podcasts with bikini athletes on and coaches and stuff, and I learn a lot. And I feel like there was a gap for this, you know, and hopefully it helps you guys get an insight into the industry, because we will be delving quite deep into things and things that maybe are not spoken about enough. And that's the thing as bikinis, there are a lot of things that aren't spoken about, and I feel anyway, and just kind of hot topics and stuff like that. And hopefully you take a lot of value from that honesty as well.
Absolutely. And I think when I started, I don't know about you guys, but when I started in 2019, the information, whilst it was out there, it wasn't as specific. I remember having a male coach to start with, being quite unfamiliar with what was accessible, what was needed, what was expected. Like, that was such a difficult thing for me to locate. So hopefully if we can help anybody, especially first-time competitors, just get a real good grip of the division, what's expected, what you need to do, who you need to be.
We're really going to cover everything, and I think that's why we're so excited, and we hope you are too, is that it's not just one specific topic. We're going to be covering everything when it comes to bikini. And yeah, I'm just so excited. We already have, an amazing lineup of people planned. As we said, from pro athletes to amateur athletes to big coaches in the industry to mindset coaches to coaches who specialize in kind of relationship with food to help you with post-show, all of that kind of thing. So yeah, get ready for it. Stay tuned, and be sure to, if you have listened to this podcast and made it all the way through, to share us on your socials, because we appreciate any of that kind of just gets this podcast out there, and anybody who might be interested in as well, share it with them. And do be sure to follow us on social media. So my Instagram is GraceMannion_.
And mine is Jade Lee Hegarty.
So thank you guys for listening to this first podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you're super excited, and we will catch you in